There is such a thing as flattery. Not all getting is good, so we have the word greed, right? And not all giving is good, so we have the word bribe. Praise, which involves both getting and giving, may not be good, and so we have the word flattery. In the gospel story you just heard, what jumped out at me for the first time really ever was that little paragraph that was the Pharisees coming to Jesus to trap him, and they tried to trap him by flattering him. They were up to no good because they were flattering him. The Greek word for flattery only occurs one time in the New Testament. Paul is defending his ministry to the disciples at Thessalonica, and he says, "We never came with flattering speech, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed, nor did we seek glory from men, either from you or from others." And I think it is more than coincidence, actually, that flattery occurs in the same sentence with the word greed. In other words, I want something from you. You can get at the heart of the word flattery when you start to think about those words. I want something from you. The idea of flattery is present in the shortest letter in the New Testament, the letter of Jude, where Jude writes, accusing certain men of admiring persons for the sake of their own advantage. Admiring persons for the sake of their own advantage. That is the idea. You are admiring and you are saying nice things about somebody for the sake of your own advantage. There is lots more said about flattery in the Old Testament, actually, than in the New. The word flatter is built on the Hebrew word for to be smooth or slippery. So a person who flatters is smoothing and caressing. I quote from Proverbs, "The lips of an adulteress drip honey, and smoother than oil is her speech. With her many persuasions, she entices him, and with her flattering lips, she seduces him." And certainly in our day, given the headlines of what's going on in the world right now, we could adjust that also to include the lips of an adulterer drip honey, and smoother than oil is his speech. With his many persuasions, he entices her, and with his flattering lips, he seduces her. Flattery, in its destructive effects, also comes around in Proverbs. A flattering mouth works ruin. And in another place in Proverbs, a man who flatters his neighbor is spreading a net for his steps. So the key question becomes, how can we celebrate or praise good things about another person without spreading a net for their steps, without working their ruin? Is there a difference between good praise and bad flattery? I think there is. Flattery is bad because it's calculated. It is given with a view of obtaining some advantage. Flattery may be true. It may be not true. But that's not the issue. You may be saying something true about somebody and still be flattering. The issue is whether it is calculated to achieve some purpose that is not rooted in the authentic, spontaneous delight that we take in the virtue we are praising. Listen to the Sadducees and the Pharisees, rather, in that gospel story. They used the truth. They were telling the truth. They were saying what people were saying about him. Teacher, we know you are a truthful man. True. We know that you teach the ways of God in accordance with the truth. True. You are not concerned with anyone else's opinion. True. You do not regard a person's status. True. They were using the truth about him, what everybody saw in him, and they were using it to twist it towards their purposes. They were using the truth to their own advantage. Teacher, teacher. In other words, the key mark of genuine, non-flattering praise is that it's the overflow of authentic delight in what we are observing in another person. It's the overflow of authentic delight. It's the opposite of calculating. It is spontaneous. C.S. Lewis writes, "We delight to praise what we enjoy." We do. We delight to praise what we enjoy because the praise not only expresses but completes the enjoyment. It is its appointed consummation. In other words, when I am truly delighted by something about you, something in you, it needs to be expressed. I dare not hold that inside. It needs to be expressed, and it completes my enjoyment of that I just delighted in you. It completes it. It's its consummation to put what I love about you into words. But flattery does not flow from sincere delight in the thing being praised. It's all external. It's all manipulative. It's elicited out of us by some other benefit that we're hoping to get through this flattery, not by the benefit that we just got, that we just experienced from that person's kindness, or their virtue, or their beauty, or their accomplishments. Raising money is something I do regularly. We have a lot of money to raise here every year. We raise $1 million+ every year to keep this place open and available to you. Washington University gives us nothing towards that end financially. So every year we start from the beginning and raise $1 million, and start from the beginning and raise $1 million. And every time it starts over, I am full of dread for many reasons. Because for me, the primary reason is because for me, for Gary Brown, it's a dangerous job. It's dangerous because it threatens my integrity. And therefore, Gary Brown must be about being hyper-vigilant that I'm not doing this for the wrong reason and I'm not doing it in the wrong way. It's so easy in raising money, they tell me in the science of development, to do friend-raising instead of fundraising. And friend-raising is convincing somebody I'm their friend so that they give us money. To say praiseful things to get a donation, as necessary as donations are for our mission here at the CSC, and not because I'm truly feeling appreciation for that I just praised, for that I just affirmed in them, that's hypocrisy. It's not fair to the person I'm approaching for this gift. It's not fair to them. It is manipulation. I have to sleep with myself at the end of the day. That's it. I want to go to bed with somebody I love, somebody I respect. That matters to me. And one more thing about that. It's one of the foundational principles of our church. And it is at the end, however holy, never ever justifies the means. The end, however good, however right, however true, however holy, never ever justifies the means. And so if I'm trying to give the impression to somebody I'm approaching for a gift, and I am truly being moved by spontaneous delight in something I admire in that potential donor, then that's a good thing. That's just praise. That's a good praise. But if I'm not being moved by spontaneous admiration and become calculating, desiring to use praise to get their gift, however much we need it, that makes me gag. It's a horrible way to think. And I dare say it's pretty prevalent these days. Bottom line is, flattery corrupts the receiver of flattery and the giver. I see it oftentimes in the dance of courtship around here. The things we say to each other to get them to be interested in us, to get them to start dating us. It's not easy to watch when it's full of flattery, not healthy praise. We fall for it. We keep falling for it. You who are students, you are incredibly talented and gifted and amazing, and that's not flattery. You are those things, and people are going to want to flatter you, to get something from you, something of your talent, something you can do for them, maybe part of your means and your wealth someday. So many will want to flatter you. We need to be alert to that, you and I. I suspect everyone likes flattery at a certain level, but especially the insecure or the proud. If we're feeling insecure and somebody begins to flatter us, we're oblivious to maybe their intent and purpose, and our ears are tickled by the flattery, and we end up doing all kinds of crazy things like dating her or committing adultery with him. When they tickle our ears like that, when we're in the midst of some insecurities in our life and their words just tickle our ears and we want more. Flattery is like chewing gum. Enjoy it, but don't swallow it. Flattery is like cologne. Smell it. Don't drink it. Flattery is all right as long as you don't inhale. Don't drink the poison. It is best by far, to be the kind of person, the kind of parent, the kind of friend or colleague, the kind of boss who sees God-given virtue or God-given achievements and is so authentically stirred with admiration and joy that it spills over into praise for them. It is so good to be that way. But if we start making the utilitarian dimension of praise prominent, which it is being made so prominent these days, it will cease to be authentic. And in the long run, it's going to backfire on us, even in those relationships that began with such dishonesty. It's going to backfire on us. Just one last help that comes from an article from a pastor named John Piper, who taught me that a good way to conceive of praising other people is to think of it as drawing attention, spontaneously enjoying, and thus drawing attention to evidences of God's grace in other people. That little phrase, it's so good to see that causes me spontaneous delight in you as evidence of God's grace, of God's love in you, with me, right there, in you. If we believe that in us weak human beings all virtue is ultimately from God, which it is, then all praising of true virtue or true accomplishment are beautiful traits in another person that we see will be conceived of as honoring God in the end, not just the human being, but honoring God in the end. You and I should be able to make the connection with God when we see something of God in a human being. Their honesty, for example, reflecting the honesty of God. Even his or her physical beauty, her attractiveness to me, to see her beauty as a manifestation in her flesh of the beauty of the creating God. To see the connection between her own skin and the face of God. And if I lose sight of that connection, I get in trouble. It becomes so utilitarian. We become so calculating. Spontaneity becomes manipulation. And then it becomes this whole other thing. That is flattery. So what is the redemptive message in this story? For us who learn about life from this book, we must learn to hate careless flattery. The kind that exhausts us in our efforts to believe it. We never want to get too suspicious when we're affirmed or praised by another human being. We don't want to be too suspicious, and the key word there is too, T-O-O. Yet, we need to be realistic that we just might be being manipulated right now so that they get what they want from me. I get so many emails. You guys would not believe sometimes the emails I get. And they start with things like, Father Gary, I haven't seen you for a long time, maybe 15 years. When I was at Washington University, you meant the world to me. I loved your homilies. I loved so much about it. I want you to know you saved my Catholic faith. And would you do my wedding in 6 months? I haven't heard from them for 15, 20 years. They've not been a part of our mission in any way. But they're buttering me up, and I can almost tell you when I read the first line that it's going to end with, will you do my wedding? That's flattery. You and I, we've got to be able to spot someone buttering us up. And listen rather for the genuine delight that someone takes in us. Genuine delight. And let me land on the most redemptive message of all as I read this text. This is true redemption. We have got to learn, my friends, we have got to learn how to stand only on our own approval or disapproval, and not depend on the approval or disapproval of anyone else, or we will succumb to flattery. We've got to stand strong in the love of God, to stand only on our own approval or disapproval, not from outside of us, but from the inside of us. That is the only thing that means anything. Yep, there is such a thing as flattery. Unfortunately.